Going to reconvene into open session. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if everybody will stand. A moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, please be seated. Right, so we have a certification of closed session, please.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Yes. Right. Dr. Gretz, were there any action coming out of the closed session?
Yes, Mr. Chairs, I recommend that as presented and discussed in closed session, the board approves student discipline cases 10A and 10B and release from compulsory attendance student case 24A.
Do you all like to vote on 10A and 10B separately from the third? Okay,
How about I move that we approve student discipline cases 10A and 10B?
I'll second. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve student discipline cases 10A and 10B. There is no discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we also approve release from compulsory education student case 24A.
I'll second. All right, I have a motion and a second for release from compulsory education student case 24A. There's no discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. All right. Anything else, Dr. Gretz? You're on to the adoption of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Oh, you can- Yes, please.
Guess I'll make a motion to add, what do we want to add? I mean, what number?
The Central Elementary bathroom remodel, RFP to action items, contract.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to amend the agenda, the Central Elementary bathroom remodel. The agenda.
So for clarification, is that adding item 13C,
13C, yes,
the Central Elementary bathroom
To-
contract award?
to award the contract, yes.
Yes, 13C, yes.
I'll second that.
All right. So a motion and a second to add an action item 13C to award the contract for the Central Elementary bathroom remodel project. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
I vote aye, sorry, if you didn't hear.
That's okay. Any opposed? Chair votes aye. All right. Anything else on the agenda? All right. On to the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda? I know sometimes you all want to discuss overnight field trip that's on there.
I'd like to pull the minutes separately.
Right. All right, 6A, approval of the minutes of the prior school board meeting.
I'm not intending to make a motion on it. I'm happy to move that we adopt consent agenda action items 6B, C, and D
Okay.
as presented.
I'll second that. All right, I have a motion and a second to approve items 6B, C, and D as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. And now we have 6A. The approval of the minutes of the prior school board meeting. Is there a reason
That's for discussion. I'm not gonna, I don't intend to vote for them, so I won't make the motion.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the prior school board meeting?
I'll make a motion, we approve the prior school board meeting from last month.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 6A, approval of minutes of the prior school board meeting. Any discussion?
Yeah, so, and this isn't any indictment on our clerk, who I think faithfully and professionally transcribes what happens during our board meetings. I don't think that there is professional language to describe how this last board meeting went. I feel as though, the chair moved along and rushed policy discussions that I think were appropriate for the public space. I think they are important. And I don't believe that a chair should rush through topics that are of public import just because they don't agree with them. I also felt disrespected as during school board member comments, I was interrupted multiple times. And I genuinely think that that whole meeting, it does a disservice to our community. I don't think that there are topics that are so taboo or problematic that they can't be discussed in public. And I don't believe that people who have a different idea than you are bad or unworthy. And I felt as though I was consistently silenced or attempted to be silenced when I'm voted here, just like anyone else. The chairman made reference to when I held the gavel at some point during that meeting, and it's in our meetings, our minutes. And when I held the gavel, I went out of my way to get feedback from individuals who feel differently than me, because I consistently learn on policies by hearing other people argue the other side. And I hope it's not a trend, because genuinely it was absolutely disrespectful, and that's not the tone that this board should take. I don't know if it was convenient or easy because I happen to be participating remotely, but I can't think of language that this board could agree to and vote on for these minutes that encompasses the way that that meeting was held. And I hope we can do a better job.
All right, any more discussion? I would suggest that when you attend remotely and there's a 45-second lag, that you consider that, because I don't think anybody really intended to interrupt you. But many of us were struggling with the pause. And then the same is true on the other side. Some of us would start speaking, and then 45 seconds later, you would come in, even though you had already started speaking prior to that, because there's a lag in technology. I don't believe anybody here intended to interrupt you.
I'll
And
acknowledge that technology can sometimes be our worst enemy as
fact-
well. And I will choose to assume that it is tech-based and that wasn't intentional.
and I would also say that it is my responsibility to move the meeting along. And at some point, when you see two sides of a discussion, and again, like I said at the meeting, Robert's Rule of Order would allow me to set a time limit for discussion. We don't need to do that. I'm saying that if we were to follow it, then we could set a time limit. I don't think that's necessary, but in my position, when I see a discussion or debate rather, going nowhere, and again, everybody had time to express their concerns and their feelings and represent their district. And I don't think there's anything left to say at that point that hadn't already been said. So that's why I said it's not productive at this time. So if anybody's angry about that, that's on me. But I have to decide when it's time to move on to the next thing and move the meeting along. And so it's my responsibility and it's on me, but I feel like I made the right decision, and if we have to do it again tonight, then it's on me to move the meeting along. So if anybody disagrees and they want to revisit Robert's Rules of Order, and we can set time limits and we can get a timer out here and we can do it the most professional way possible, then we'll do that. But I just don't think it's necessary. Anyway, any more discussion on 6A? I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the prior school board meeting, item 6A. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
Chair votes aye. All right. We are on to item 7A, recognitions of the Fluvanna County Public FCPR members county fair event. Ms. Valentine, I saw two other folks here. I guess they're here with Miss Valentine. Okay.
I don't know that they came willingly, but they came.
Okay.
So, if anyone knows Wade Parrish, who I will ask to stand very quick, or just wave either way. Aaron Spitzer.
Come give a speech, Wade.
And Aaron Spitzer, neither one of them really likes to have a big deal made over them, but I have to make a big deal over them. I started this position, I believe, 7 or 8 years ago now. And immediately got an email, I barely started the job and got an email from Wade saying, hey, we want to do a field trip. And I had participated in that before as a staff member. But ever since that time, they kept growing and growing what we do with the kids. And so as soon as we back to school, very quickly, we have to plan a field trip 3 days later, which is why our ECSE kids have not participated. They're not quite ready. 3 days into school, they don't even recognize their teachers necessarily. So we've not participated with our ECSE, but we have taken it all the way down to kindergarten. If I could tell you what these gentlemen do, they invite us, they invite parents, they feed us. Between them and one other recognition I cannot do tonight because they're at Key West, I hope they're safe, or down helping with hurricane relief, SNL concessions. So there were 3 people I really wanted to recognize. But so again, they feed us, they give us all access to the rides. The kids get to do, and yes, I mean, kids get to do anything. And like if the kid wants to stay on this merry-go-round for 50 times, trust me, we did it. We stay on the ride for 50 times. If the kid wants to go once and stop. I have never seen a more adaptive environment. We change the music, we change the lights. We take a child on a wheelchair and hook him with mother's permission to the back of a golf cart and make a special ride just for him. I cannot begin to explain the hometown community feel behind this event. And our kids with some most significant needs, our teenagers are allowed to have the independence of wandering through a fair, which is fairly safe because of all the staff we have and the low numbers of people there, where they get to go be independent and practice all of those skills that we teach them that they couldn't maybe do on Friday night at the fair or Saturday at the fair. Our littles just get to have the sheer joy of doing what they want to do and not having to wait in long lines. I just don't know how to say I appreciate this so much. And so I wanted to recognize these 2 individuals. Our kids made cute little signs and thank you letters. And then we also have some artwork that our littlest of children made for you. So you can put this at your office, place of business, wherever you choose.
You all want to come down here and receive them and take a photo? I know Wade wants to give a speech.
So I will let you pick your picture.
I'll put them in the.
Okay, this is supposed to be the hardest spot, and I'll save this one for.
Yeah.
And then this for you.
Thank you so much.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you like to take a picture at the board?
Sure. Game for whatever.
Once they finally said yes to me after requesting 4 years in a row, we knew we had them.
Yeah, that's something we enjoy doing, so. I've been yelled at for putting a kid on the floor. But he jumped on the four-wheeler.
What Pete Gretz was gonna
What are you
say.
doing? The kid jumped on the four-wheeler, right? Take him for a ride. Please.
All right, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Right. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Good job. So much. Apologies for.
Thank you.
You can make fun of me later for it.
I'll make fun of it.
You should.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
I know you're gonna love these public things.
With this and an old form
Hopefully
day.
you'll get some time off between meetings.
That's great. Thank you all.
It's awesome.
Started how old was
I was a kid.
that?
I was born in 87. So I would say maybe mid-90s.
That's right.
I know.
Long time.
Good to see you.
Yep, take care.
Mr. Pullo, would it be okay during this time, since we have our student rep, if I could just real quickly just acknowledge him?
Absolutely.
We've got our representative from the high school to the school board student representative. And we introduced him in his absence last month, but this is senior Ethan Ritchie. Ethan, we welcome you to this position. Typically, there'll be an opportunity for you to share insights from your perspective. We don't expect you to do that tonight, but there may be an opportunity. And if there is, we'd love for you to do that, but welcome. We appreciate you being here. Is there anything you want to say? I don't want you to feel like you have to. Okay. Well, we really do appreciate you doing this. We're looking forward to having you as a part of this. Thank you.
All right, we are on to delegations, Abrams project update. I don't see Mr. Bauer.
No, Mr. Bauer is not here. I'm actually standing in for him. If you give me just a moment, I'm gonna pull up a little something that he sent me. He wasn't able to be here. He's, well, he's ill. So in the board packet, you don't necessarily have to pull it up, Josh, but in the board packet, I believe is an updated phase one. So they're about 50% through designing the schematics for the renovation. They meet with staff bi-weekly right now at Abrams to discuss the design and to make adjustments to the layout, systems, interior finishes. Their proposed schedule right now would be the additional survey completed by October 14th of the facility, November 22nd, 100% review of the schematic design, so that would be complete altogether. January 31st of 2025 would be the completion of the design, so the schematic design and then the actual design development, the scope, and the construction documents to follow in March. So if all of that stays on track, we'd be able to bid the project out in April and to begin construction in June.
Josh, I think board docs is down.
Yeah, that's all.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay,
I'm just gonna tell Pete, you're gonna have to roll with paper.
I got it.
That's okay. Yeah,
I stay by paper anyways.
okay. We're good. We're good.
Paper and my flower pen.
And sorry, Mr. Gifford. Should have been more formal.
So the recommendation to you tonight is for the architect to come in and to update the board at the end of each of those phases as they go through that process. And of course, if there's ever an opportunity for a change or something that the board would desire, we can have them come. Do you have any questions about that? That's the update that they would have been.
Any questions? All right, reports from our student liaison. I'm guessing there's no reports just yet. All right,
Board docs is back up somehow, or at least for a second. It's really being funny today.
Still.
all right, well,
It's just cash. So.
with that said, we will move on to our first round of public comments. We've arrived at our first round of public comments for tonight's meeting. Any Fluvanna County citizen or employee of the Fluvanna County Public School System is welcome to speak, and the expectations are that you address the board, not individual members. You provide your name and voting district, that you do not exceed 3 minutes, and that you are respectful. The board will not interact with you during public comments. But you're welcome to stay here after the meeting and talk to us afterwards. There'll be a second opportunity for public comments later in the night. And we probably don't have a 3-minute timer, do we? Oh, there we go. All right, you have 3 minutes to speak if anybody's wishing to speak. Anyone wishing to speak? All right, we will close our first round of public comment and we will go to reports. Reports from Dr. Grants.
Thank you, members of the board. So you have a lot of information to share with you tonight. And I'll first start with my report under the instruction section. There is a ton in there that I would refer people to. And much of it, I think, is going to be discussed or at least touched upon by Ms. Suarez during the comprehensive review of data. But I in particular, we just call your attention to, it's good for everybody to be familiar with the new accountability framework that has been approved by the board, the school performance and support framework. So there's a lot in there that I think would be of interest to people. A lot of work that's been done, outreach to the community and community events. I'll call your attention to those. I'm not necessarily going to read those to you. We hosted an event. As you're aware, there was a Commonwealth Conversation, it was called, where the author of The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt, was interviewed and discussed the data that's in the book, The Anxious Generation. And we had a couple of staff members who hosted that event here. We had about 10, I think, that attended. And what I would just simply call your attention to and ask the board in particular, if you haven't, I've linked it in the report. It's about an hour. And the people who attended, both those that came in very skeptical of the cell phone free education initiative and those who came in just maybe supportive of it or weren't sure, everybody seemed to leave having been very profoundly impacted by that conversation. And I think as we move through what we need to do as a school division with you as a school board, which is just pragmatically speaking, we've gotten the final guidance. I've been working with other colleagues throughout Region 5 to draft a policy that we would bring you in November for first reading. And then hopefully you could approve that in December, because we're really, in order to be compliant, we need to be lined up to go in January. And I think, I'm not suggesting that you would watch that and agree with everything in it, or that you would watch it and it would make all the decisions easy. I do think that you will all be in a better position to make the decisions that you have to make if you at least experience that. I think it would be well worth your time to do it. I had a wonderful conversation with about 20 high schoolers today for about 90 minutes about this issue. Just getting feedback. I didn't go over there to convince them of anything, just to kind of lay out what was going on with the executive order and what we did and didn't need to comply with, how some of the definitions, what's different about what we need to do, and got wonderful feedback from them. So I think, you know, the extent to which we can have a community-wide engagement on the issue, and at the very minimum, I think experiencing that, if everybody just has a common experience there that can spark common dialogue, I think it'll be really helpful. So I did want to highlight that.
Do you anticipate VSBA coming out with a policy in alignment with that?
Not going to. Yeah. Similar to,
Can we pay them for policy?
well, we do. I'm not, you know, defending the VSBA or, you know, neutral on this, but in cases of an executive order, now if there's like legislation,
It's crazy because they were Johnny on the spot with the other executive orders.
well, I think where there's legislation involved, there are policies that they craft or amend.
Mhm.
But with regards to something that is really, we're responding to guidelines. I'm telling you what I have been told to this point. I could say this to you and they could come out with something tomorrow, but,
Yeah, I just wanted to compare whatever we ultimately draft with what would be recommended by them, so I can see what the like policy differences are.
Yeah.
So, mostly for my own notification, but if they're not going to draft one, then there's nothing to compare to.
so they attend our regional meeting, the regional superintendent's meeting every month. We'll meet with them again in Louisa next Tuesday, but they attended the last one and it was not their intention to draft a policy at that point.
Dr. Gritz, is there, I don't want to get us off down a rabbit hole here, but was there anything that really jumped out to you from the student's perspective from your meeting? Like any very commonalities amongst a lot of students? I'm just very intrigued by this cell phone
Yeah,
policy conversation in a lot of different ways.
I really had hoped that just candidly in response, I haven't been able to really sit down and summarize well in my mind how to deliver that in a couple of sentences. I think, you know, the things that jumped out, I think that I also don't want any of them to hear what I'm saying and feel like I'm misrepresenting because they didn't all say the same thing. In general, there seemed to be a recognition that most kids are too attached to their cell phones. They seem to express that, not all of them. But most of them seem to agree with that. I think that the one piece that I would say is, trying to think about it. We already have the expectation, and it's clear in our policy, it's clear in our handbook. We've said this before in here, that you're not allowed to have cell phones during instructional time. And that is enforced with, sporadic consistency. And so there was a call from students for more consistency there, that really would, I think many of them saw that would help. There were so many reactions, Mr. Reed. It's so hard for me to generalize across all of them, but
Yeah.
I did intend to sit down and maybe do this. And try
Yeah,
to write
I would
something.
love to hear their feedback. I don't expect this.
I think
Be a
they
very
felt
quick
like it would be
conversation.
kind of jarring to suddenly walk in and to not have, I was meeting with upperclassmen, so they were all 11th and 12th grade. It was interesting because after the meeting, several students came to me and a lot of the response was very similar to what I saw the response to other executive orders that we've had, which is the school board is put in a position to comply with an executive order. And the response is often people coming to the school board saying, how dare you do this? Or please don't do this. And I have always thought, I'm not speaking for any of you, but I gave the example in this very room 3 years ago that it's kind of like asking you, does the school board have the authority to allow people to not obey the school zone speed limit? You really don't. And so similarly with an executive order, but a lot of the conversation was kind of pushing back on that. Afterwards, there were probably 5 students who came to me afterwards and said, look, I really get this. It's a problem. And this would be a lot better if we just didn't have them. I'm not going to generalize across all the students based on 4 or 5 that said that.
Mhm.
So I think students in my experience with them, just at least, the minimal experience that I've had. And Ethan, I'm not putting you on the spot, but if you have feedback, you should feel free to give it for sure. But that is that I think students are wrestling the same way adults are. I think there's in general, maybe a recognition that probably it would be beneficial for something to change. But we're gonna have a hard time with that and,
So one specific question. They
Yeah.
acknowledged that there is a current policy saying cell phones are not
Yes.
allowed out during the classroom
Yeah.
currently.
yeah. And I don't wanna
Okay.
overstate
Like, I guess what I'm
Dynamic
trying to,
that-
and again, I don't want to get us off on a rabbit hole, but like, if they're saying, hey, we know there's a problem right now, but they're also acknowledging, hey, we know we have a policy right now. I guess we should also acknowledge that another policy on top of a current policy might not solve a current situation they're acknowledging is a situation without playing too much of semantics.
Yeah, and I guess I'd want them to respond to that really. My perception of how I think I read that today is it is enforced. They do feel like it's enforced. They feel like it's enforced, differently maybe, but for the most part, it's enforced. And they did talk about the difference between class time and hall time. And I think generally speaking, they feel like the expectation in class is being adhered to pretty well. A lot of the pushback was not being able to use them in the hall, not being able to use them in the lunchroom. There was a lot of conversation about communicating with parents, not being able to, and it really wasn't about the emergency situations, at least not today with that group. But it was more, my mom texted me and asked me, I'm gonna be late at work, can you pick up your brother from school? Things like that. Because the executive order and the guidelines that we've received, if you read them, they specifically address that. And it takes us back to where we were pre-cell phones, which is communication from me, the parent, to my child through the school, goes to the office and the parent's called up and or the child, and they're given the message through the office.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, I do want to clarify that I'm going to try to bring you a draft in November. And the big differences, I guess, for us to all think about would be, as I said, instructional time versus non-instructional time. There are specific definitions in the guidelines for secondary students, middle and high school. And that's a little different for us because our middle school is different from the traditional middle school. So is a fifth grade student considered elementary in the guidelines from the state? It doesn't specify. I mean, that's the kind of thing we have to work through, those nuances. Because elementary students in the guidelines are not allowed to use mobile devices on school grounds. Period. High school students and middle school students are not allowed to use them during the school year, which means there is a provision for them to use them after school, at football games, things like that. There is not that provision for elementary. So what does that look like for a middle school student or a middle school where there is an elementary age that the expectation is different? And do we need to parse that out, or can Fluvanna maybe make that decision based on our configuration, what makes sense for our school? That is, I think, the biggest thing for us to contend with. If we're going to be compliant with this order, there are some other provisions in there. Obviously, there's provisions for medical situations and medical needs. But currently, what we have in policy is not compliant with the expectation that students not use cell phones during the day, period. That would be a change.
And to confirm, this October 24th night, that conversation is specific to this new cell phone guidance and community feedback and things like that?
The October 24th engagement night came out of that conversation that we hosted.
Right.
And it was a desire from the parents who attended to say, more and more parents need to be engaged in this.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's the focal point of that night, right?
Yeah, I don't think
Just
it's
so we
the
can
only
communicate it.
focal point,
Okay,
but it is
The main-
it is what started it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yes, okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, thank you. We did meet with Commonwealth Attorney in their office about educating families and students. Now, their particular interest is talking with families about the seriousness, the legalities behind what happens when you are involved in social media related threats and threats to school safety and the things that we're seeing all across the Commonwealth. So it's a little different nuanced conversation about cell phones, but certainly related. Okay. There are a lot of other things in here, but you have a lot, I guess, well, the last thing I'll just let you know, there's a link to the survey that we're gonna use to gather feedback about the forthcoming budget that you're gonna be considering. So we're gonna get feedback from the community on that and hopefully get as much participation as possible. And I'd like to present that to you in November. So we're gonna cut that off November 1st. Anything else in there that's of interest? There's a lot in there that I'm not quite done, so I don't want to keep you on that.
are you touching on the staff advisory minutes?
Only that they're in there, but if there's anything
Okay.
specific in there, I can.
I just have a question. What typically comes from, I know you have meetings with those committees. What typically comes from those responses? Outside of just meeting with the committees and I don't say you do this just to check a box. I'm not
Oh, yeah, no, no, no.
insinuating that. Like what comes from when we say
It depends.
bereavement days are not enough? Like that's a pretty serious topic of conversation, especially if somebody travels out of county, out of state, things like that. Like how do we proceed with responses like that, especially something like that that I know gets brought up kind of regularly?
Yeah, well, that one was addressed in September, and if you look at that, so that one in particular, let me answer your first question. Depends on what it is.
Okay.
If it's an action item, if it's like, there was one about speed bumps, I
Mhm.
mean, we put things in place to fix that.
Right.
If it's a general concern, maybe about the calendar, then we make that a part of what's happening, in the calendar development. The one about bereavement or things like that, I went to all the different policies around us. And we give as much, if not more, benefit towards bereavement as anybody else.
Isn't it three? 3 days if it's local and 5 days if you have to travel a certain distance?
It's 3 days specific to bereavement, in addition to your paid time off that you have. So most places will say for bereavement, I linked them in September, you can see what they are, but they'll say for bereavement, you can use 3 of your sick days, or you can use 5 of your sick days. It will give more time in addition to what you have like we do.
Oh, I see, yeah. You're not
So-
required to give, we're giving them bereavement leave separate from sick leave and annual leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not required to do that.
Yeah, and most aren't doing that. So in that case, something came up, I would tell them, like, this is comparable. I probably wouldn't recommend that we do something different.
So there is follow-up with the folks who are presenting these questions, concerns.
Yes.
But okay, that was kind of my main thought.
Yes.
Is that specifically a policy you'd like to see?
No. I just knowing,
Just as an example.
over the years, there's just a lot of similar things that get brought. I just wanted to make sure we followed up with the folks who were basically saying, hey, I'm taking the time to fill out this survey instead of just blindly filling out a survey and not hearing anything back. So mainly just a communication.
Now, this is not a survey. This is actually, I am in a room with them.
Right. Right.
So they bring these to me, we talk through them, and then I go back and research and then post the
Right.
answers here.
Okay,
Because oftentimes in the room, I don't have I do my best to answer, but
Yep.
I might have to go back and do some research. Yeah. Is there ever anything in there that you see that you would want to bring up and talk about? I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, bereavement leave,
I was just using that as an example.
got you.
I don't have a conversation about bereavement leave. It's one of the first ones that was just on the page when I scrolled
yeah,
down.
understood. Okay, so.
I-
Go ahead.
Anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about and or articulate that, like, I've been having one-on-one conversations with Board of Supervisors and make myself available in those meetings as well to field questions as an individual or as an individual board member. I never speak for the rest of you, but of course, categorical funding has been coming up in the last couple of weeks. And one of the things that I thought is reasonable would be, so one of the questions that the supers had, and in fact, I apologize to Chris Fairchild, who my watch dialed him during our meeting, during public comments, and so it's in a nice little timeout there, and sorry to Chris, but one of the things that I was asked during that meeting is like, are we asked in advance about categorical transfers? Do they appear in a consent agenda, so on and so forth? And so I said, I can't specifically remember exactly all of the consent agenda from up to 6 years ago, and so I'll gather information and get back to you. Mr. Gritz, or Dr. Gritz, I'm so sorry, sent an email and follow-up, providing all that information. One thing that's dawned on me, or that I think is reasonably compelling, and I'm not sure that it takes a vote at all. I think it would just require a couple of us to nod our heads, is so we don't see categorical transfers. Like I remember many calls from both Chucky and Dr. Gretz on, we need to move money to do X, Y, or Z. I'm letting you know in advance. It's a power that we defer to the superintendent. And of course, we see outgoing expenditures in all of our budget lines. And that's what we just voted on tonight. So we're responsible we defer the power, but we ultimately approve post hoc and consent agenda the expenditures. It seems that it would be tidy and not that big of a deal, since it happens all of once a year, if we were to just have a consent agenda item that says categorical transfer, so that it's there, searchable and findable. Is there a chance there are other 2 board members who are deferent enough to see in the consent agenda a categorical transfer line, or do you have opinions as to why that would be problematic?
Not at all. I don't see it being a problem. I do want to just make sure everyone knows. They're also in the budget document. So you'll find an explanation of what it is, but then you'll see it in the fiscal year report. So it's in both.
I don't want to get in, me personally, I don't want to get in the conversation too far because we're still working out a meeting that, where this will be discussed in detail, but that's one of the things that we've already discussed, was making it easier to find if that does happen.
Yeah, it just felt like this, because of the history and because we're in a public meeting where all 5 of us are here. I don't know why it would be that big of a deal not to just have it and then it's there in perpetuity.
I I would say that none of this was a big deal. That was a conversation we could have had over the phone, not in a 2 hour time period in a board of supervisors meeting, but I
My
agree.
pig, not my farm.
Yeah, I agree. Um, sometimes things are easier handled, amongst phone calls and
I think I was on a plane during that one, so I'm not even gonna take shrapnel for that. Won my meeting and I went in the country.
Are you talking about, Dr. Kelly, you talking about having like a standing
Yeah.
consent?
Yeah,
item
so like when we
that
need to
says,
transfer
so typically
money.
there'd be none.
Sorry, not even a stand-in, just like when it happens,
Oh, I see.
like on that one time a year where we gotta move money in order to.
They would
pay
say-
Bonuses, it would just say,
it would say 6E,
yeah,
categorical.
you can even put exclamation points on it if you want, make it bold and blue. I'm joking, I'm just saying, like, if it's there and we can flag it so that it's a little more obvious for people, then, then it'll be even more transparent than the existing documentation.
That's one of the things we discussed. I'm sure we'll discuss.
Yeah, I don't wanna step on your toes, I'm just trying to like, I wanna answer and be available, not as the board chair, obviously, but like in good partnership with other members to ensure that we're on the same page and speaking the same language and working together for the benefit of our students. And if this makes that conversation easier moving forward, it feels like a little bit of work on the admin part and not that big of a deal.
I'd agree. I mean, it's listening to a lot of that conversation at multiple board of supervisors meetings. It's a communication conversation. And I think the closer our two boards work together, the easier this conversation is. And we are allotted with a lot of money each year for the county schools. We're responsible and realize what that does for the county. And I think that the closer we work together with the board of supervisors, the better that relationship is.
I'll note that we frequently don't get as much revenue as we are required to have in order to spend our full amount, and we never overspend and then go back to the county for money either. So I do think that this board and Ms. Grasser in particular does a good job being fiduciaries and responsible with the public trust. But if this is one more way that we can say that we're communicating well, we should do it. So I think that was at least 3, 4.
I think
Do you mind?
you're a month ahead of us. We were gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a month ahead of us, but that's good.
I dive right back in, man. Thanks.
Absolutely.
And by the way, we have a meeting November 6th.
Can't remember.
We're supposed to have a meeting November 6th where this was gonna be a discussion, not the board, but
About the chairs and
Chairs.
whomever, right? Chairs and vice chairs and whatnot.
And I think what we're gonna suggest would be for that to become a standing meeting too. We only have partial control of that, but we just have a predictable meeting on calendar. You know, we've done it before.
Yeah, we used to do it with Moselle.
I think it can be helpful.
To the extent that the vice chair is invited, as long as there's not 3, whatever, whoever works. Thank you.
I wanted to take a few moments and just, Mr. Gifford, if you want to pull up the new website, I hope you've had an opportunity to take a look at it. His team and Josh in particular have done just an extraordinary job of both vetting the different solutions, choosing one, migrating to the new site, and then training everybody, which is going to continue to be a work in progress. But the design obviously is intended to be more accessible, more intuitive. Some of the pages are still being developed, but any feedback that you have, we'd love to hear. I mean, this is one of our main tools to communicate, and we want to make sure it's done well.
Nice having the app.
Yeah, I'll
And-
note
and
that
the
I
app.
downloaded an app and I've turned on notifications for 5 schools in the division, and so I hope to experience the same communication that the public is getting and be more informed as to how well it's working. Fall Festival, if you're done with that one.
Sure.
It was pretty fabulous. I know Mr. Reed was there. I saw Mr. Key as well. I thought it was a really successful event. It is annually and got some great weather, and I even needed to cover up a little bit because the sun was baking. So we got an extra day of summer in the Fall Festival, but I thought it was fabulous.
It was. Yeah, they always do an amazing job with that. I do want to just, again, thank you, Mr. Gifford, for the work you've done there with the app, and it'll continue to develop, obviously. A lot of us are involved in that, and so could you pull up the strategic plan, Josh? I want to take just a moment here. We weren't able to have our retreat because we had, we had a social media event, but I wanted to take just a moment and go through, I know you've seen this before, but where we've landed here, this is something that I'd like to have the board formally approve. We're really already operating from this standpoint. But we've crafted a vision and a mission coming from the standpoint of what impact do we want to have. So we want to equip students for life to have a positive impact. The mission, what do we need to be doing in order to have that impact? We want to maximize the potential of our students, our staff, our families, basically everybody in our community. We want to put them in a position to have their potential maximized. So the core values for each one of these, we've established a value, a working definition for trust, the ability to believe in others, and then some just very quick, brief, actionable, what does it look like? What does it look like for somebody to exhibit the value of trust? Honest, respectful, reliable, show integrity, be transparent. I won't read all of these to you, but we have 4 of them. We really want to begin to integrate these into both our literature, but also into our decisions, the evaluations that we do of one another and of our decisions, just to make sure that this becomes part of our working dialogue. Trust, relationships, work ethic, and optimism. So what I'd like to do is I'm not going to go through all of these, but I want to take just the first one. And these are not in any order yet. We essentially have 3 goals. So each one of those goal areas, bless you.
Thank you.
One related to the culture, one related to relationships, and one related to instruction and learning. So again, these aren't in any order of priority. They can become 1, 2, and 3. Right now, it's just a goal area. So I'd like to go through this one with you, get any feedback that you have, and encourage you to go through everybody, to go through these and give us feedback. I've been to each of the schools to go through these, and it'll be on our website for people to review. It has been, and hopefully get this really kind of solid and in place. So the first goal area, inspiring inclusive culture. What we're saying is that we want to create the kind of culture where everybody feels valued, welcomed, informed, and empowered. How are we going to do that? I'll read through the objectives. The first one, support the physical and mental safety and wellness of students and staff. So for each of these, there are strategies, and for each strategy, there are tactics. I'd like to read through the strategies just associated with this first one, and you can go through the individual tactics. I won't read all those to you, but how would we support the mental health? As you go back up just a little bit, Josh. Cultivate a student-centered culture. So we want to make sure that students feel that the adults in the schools surrounding them care about them and support them. How would we do that? There's a list of things that we want to make sure that we're doing to make sure that kids are surrounded in places where they feel like the adults care about them. Strategy number 2, create and implement policies and practices that encourage and provide for staff wellness. We said Fluco of the Year. We've already rolled out the Teacher of the Year. We brought that back, Teacher of the Year and Staff Member of the Year. Maybe it's not called Fluco of the Year. Maybe it's just Teacher and Staff Member of the Year. But the point is, and that is a direct result of staff for the past couple of years saying, will you please bring that back? So create a way to recognize and operationalize those values, to celebrate when we see those. We have a lot of recognitions that are going on. Promote the use of the Employee Assistance Program. That is something that's free to our employees through our insurance program, and it can provide some really valuable help. So again, I don't want to read through all of these. The next strategy, develop, publish, and operationalize a public relations and communication plan. We have an informal communication plan that I've written, but what we want to do is really take an inventory of all the ways that we're communicating. And I think it is certainly a timely thing for us to talk about in the wake of the incident that we went through where we were communicating with our community about schools and closing, and obviously there are ways that we can do that better. And so we want to take an inventory of what we're doing, What kind of protocol do we have? How do they communicate with each other? How do we use them? And streamline all those, align all those tools, and survey the community. I'd like to survey the community, just ask them, what are the best ways to communicate? You guys probably are aware that I started I called it a blog. I mean, that's probably, that's like 1990s, isn't it? A place where I would feature on the website just different news articles. I'm not sure that those were reaching people. And so, you know, that's maybe not a good way to do that. Maybe that we need to, I used to, in other divisions, I would use Twitter. I'm not even on Twitter anymore. I found that in my last division wasn't something parents were using. Maybe let's ask parents, what are the best ways to get information in your hand?
I think
How
you
do
have
you
to call it X or formerly known as
Well,
Twitter.
there you go.
You know, it's important to get the feedback, but we just dealt with this here recently. Everybody wants communication, but then when the sheriff's office communicated that the 911 system was down, a bunch of people were complaining about communication because they didn't want to be woken up. So, I mean, I at the end of the day, I say, receive the communication, but do the right thing. Do what you think is right. And there's always going to be somebody or groups of people that don't use Facebook. They want it, or there's gonna be people that don't have landlines and some that do. You're not gonna make everybody happy, but I would say receive the feedback and then still do what you think is right, regardless of where certain people push you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's not really just, obviously, not just communication in times of, you know, emergency, or it's really, how do we get everybody engaged? How do we get information? You know, I still receive, and I anticipate, this is not meant to be disparaging, but we're getting ready to ask the community for input on budget. One of the questions is, what are some of the ways we could save money? Invariably, I get feedback through that says you guys should go solar. All of our facilities have been fully solar powered for at least 3 years, if not 4. So how do we get that information? How do we get information about what's happening in our schools, about just celebrating what the good things? And what's the best way to connect with our community, and just hear from them on that. So expand and align the division's mental health programs. So we light years stepped with bringing Caitlin on, obviously. And so there are some things that we want to do to expand those services and really make sure that we're in a good position to meet all the needs. The needs continue to increase. Improve school safety, school discipline, eliminate bullying from our schools. We have some very actionable things that we want to do with our crisis response plans and other ways. I don't want to read through all those to you unless you want me to. So for each one of these, here's another objective: establish a work environment characterized by high expectations, support for strategic creativity and risk-taking. We expect that teachers will be very strategic. We don't want people to be willy-nilly, but we want them to be creative. We want them to do the things that they're intuitively designed to do with kids. So how do we do that? Each one of these, there are strategies under the objectives. I don't want to read all these to you, but I encourage everybody to go through here, take a look at them, see what you think we're missing. What kinds of things do you think that you really like, and how would you want that to be reflected? Because I'm going to bring it to you and ask you to approve it. So, any questions about that or anything more specific? I don't want to rush through it, but we do have a lot of information for you. It's something that I'm very proud of the work that we've done on this, and I've gotten very favorable responses from teachers. We have changed it a little bit just from some of the feedback that we've gotten as I've gone out into the schools. So with that, the only other thing I'll highlight in here is the budget calendar. You don't need to pull it up, Mr. Gifford, but just to remind you, there is a date in there that the board decided to wait until January. It's a January workshop date. So you chose all the others, but there is one in there that will need to be decided upon. It's still highlighted. And just wanted to remind you of that. Anything else in here that you'd like me to go through? The Learning Resource Committee did meet, and there are a couple of books that are causing some attention. And so I'm highlighting that to encourage as many people as possible to read those books and give the feedback. There's a form that Ms. Soares puts out to get feedback. And I encourage everybody to take advantage of that and give their input there. I am going to do that. Anything else in my reports that you're interested in? Thank you.
Should be on to VSBA Fluvanna policy updates.
Yes, sir. So policies, there's nothing in there really substantive. There are some changes in terminology. I'll highlight for you EBCD. And it basically gives the school division and the superintendent in this case, the ability, if there's an unforeseen weather day or otherwise the schools have to be closed, that we can declare an unscheduled remote learning day. There's some stipulations around that. So I'm just letting you know there's a policy in here that gives us the ability to do that. There are some considerations around it, and I need to make sure I know what those are before we just start declaring remote learning days. But that, I think, is something for everyone to pay attention to. The policy this is kind of ironic because we just named the auditorium after Horace Scruggs. That was a wonderful ceremony. But because that naming facilities isn't legally required, the VSBA has repealed that policy. So doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you don't have a policy around it anymore unless you choose to. And then GCA, this is new, and it's completely related to the Literacy Act. This is about reading specialists, and now they're required differently through the Literacy Act, and the ratios and everything are in there. But anything else in those policies that would be of interest? Those are the only things that I thought were significant to highlight for you.
So does that mean, so there's a policy with minimum ratios. The Literacy Act funding came in and was distributed across multiple things. Are those positions, are our reading specialist or enough reading specialists for those ratios built into our recurring budget? Meaning when we start the budget process, are they already baked into our existing revenue, or are these going to be positions that we're going to need to add and ask for more money from the county for?
No, I believe we're compliant now with those requirements in our. Go ahead.
Hired for 6th through 8th grade, our reading specialists high school would be funded out of all-in funding and.
So that will go away after next year. That's right. Thank you.
So that's exactly why I'm asking is
Yeah.
whether or not we need to go from short-term funding, which happens a lot with requirements. You get,
That's right.
if we're lucky and it's not a completely unfunded mandate, we'll get some pool of short-term money, and then ultimately those employees or their positions need to be transferred into recurring. So as we go into the January budget cycle, we do need to include them in so that'll be a plus position on our zero budget line, or is it next calendar year?
What is the sunset on the all-in money? Is it, do you remember? Because it's different.
All this, the money to.
Yeah.
Budget, but not all of them.
I really need to probably bring that back to you
Yep.
with more.
That's perfect. As we get into the season,
Great questions.
there are, and we go through this every year about sort of like, okay, we hired to be compliant, or we hired with federal money, or the state gave you money for X. And we want to be transparent. Every now and then I hear something about like sneaking in new roles to our recurring budget, and that's just not the case at all, but we should be clear about what we have on staff based on these acts. What of it is grant funded and what of it ultimately needs to be moved into a recurring line. I also dislike zero level accounting, but it's what we do. And so making sure we know why it is that we're adding positions can help us advocate to the county.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Soares.
Anything else? Policy related? So moving on to fiscal 24 budget update. The big thing here for us to consider, and if you want to discuss it today, would be, if you go to the last page, Mr. Gifford, there, well, at the bottom. So all the way at the bottom. I think there's still some more down. There we go. So that's our projected fund balance, $425,000. We've had conversations, just kind of one-on-one conversations, we talked a little bit. In the last meeting, I've got some information for you that I can share tonight. You're gonna have to make a decision about what to ask for, if you're gonna ask for anything next month. So there was a consideration around using some of that turn back for not the renovations of the bathrooms that are currently about to happen, but the others. And that was a leftover conversation from last year's supervisor meetings, where I think it was expressed that the
Yeah.
desire was
I
for
can
that to be
confirm
used.
that I was in the
That wasn't at that
meetings and that as opposed to funding the school bathrooms in one chunk, they asked us to ask for carryover funds to go through and do a couple of bathrooms at a time. And I am very confident, and if you need me to find video on that, I can, but that was the expressed relationship as it relates to asking for money for specific bathrooms in Central. And we took tours of them some odd months ago with Mr. Hodge for sure. I think Mr. Key was there as well. And I know they just gave us more cash for our track too, and I'm sure that'll dampen enthusiasm to put more money back into schools, but I think it's incumbent on us to at least make the ask and say, ask us to ask.
So you've got the bathrooms. In addition, was some sentiment around looking at potential security safety upgrades. We were able to do the key fob, the centralized key fob project that was part of the CIP request with remaining school security funds. So that's no longer a consideration. The open gate weapon detectors, those are the dual, those are about $18,000 to $20,000 a pair. And so that's something that's in our CIP request to obtain 4 of those. That is something that we could consider asking for. The issue with those is that there is there's probably a staffing impact, because you can't just put them at the door. You have to have somebody there as people come in to address if it goes off, there are things that need to be, we saw these in action in Louisa, and Chromebooks, for example, certain 3-ring binders, the metal binding in those will set them off. And so once students, what we saw were students that were really kind of accustomed to the routine. They come in, they take their Chromebook, they pass it around, they go through. Somebody has to be there. And the consideration during the day, if they're going to be there during the day and somebody comes in. So the way they handle that in Louisa, for what it's worth, is a stipend. So they're paying stipends to several people to man those. That is just something I want to point out. There is a consideration about how we would do that. But those can be moved, as you know, they can be moved down to the sports complex and they can be used. Door lock hardware is something, so the replacement of the door locks, that's something that Travis is still trying to price. It is exceedingly expensive. But there are two things there that, again, just through one-off conversations. One is a desire from staff to have us put all of the locks on kind of the same framework. So currently there was a decision made when the high school was built to have a situation where the door automatically locks. If a student goes, it locks behind them. You have to stop instruction to let them back in. So that's a separate issue from what some of you have talked about, which is a door locking mechanism that would be initiated during a crisis. We've not been able to price those. And Dr. Stribling was working with the sheriff to find out even, one time the training suggested that any kind of door barricade was a fire hazard, that we weren't able to do those kinds of things. Since that time, I know they are marketed I don't know what the rules are for us, and Dr. Stribling's following up on that.
Yeah, those seem to be, I mean, at scale, they're gonna be expensive, but there are some of them that teachers can effectively step on
That's right.
a lock, and then it gets embedded in the floor, which has structural and load and all of that, that prevents the door from being open. To the extent that we can explore those seem like relatively, every solution's gonna have a problem. Some kid's gonna lock himself in one of the rooms one of these days if they're able to just step on the thing. And so there's always considerations around that, but doing what we can to ensure that teachers have the capacity to keep their kids safe in the event of unthinkable,
Yeah.
that feels worthy of exploration.
I was asked to look into panic button lanyards. They're Crisis Alert is the company that's most associated with those. I'm sure there are others, but that's what I looked at. Centegix and Crisis Alert. So there's a staff alert. It's a single button activation basically that you can wear on a lanyard. It basically notifies I need help, and it displays a map that shows the location of the person that needs help, where they are on campus. There's a campus-wide alert. And so there's more related to that. Those are about $8,000 a year for the school.
8,000 for the whole division or for
Well,
one school?
$8,000 depending on the level of service that you choose. So the campus-wide alert versus the panic button alert. I think that if that's something that is of interest to the board, what I need to do is have that company come in and do a demonstration for us so we can really understand the cost.
I'd like to learn more. These are the ID badges that were instrumental in the Georgia
That's right.
school shooting in early September. A teacher was able to press it and alerted the folks, and it
Notifies 911. activates-
expedited everything and probably saved lives. So it's one of those, I expect there to be a delay in high demand for them because of that. But that's one of those things that if we can budget for it, I don't know why we want to take the time to keep our kids safe.
And then there are several requests that are currently in our CIP. I met last night with the planning commission to go through all of these. Obviously, we won't know until those decisions are made what's actually funded. But we've got a bus, a 10-passenger van. There is flooring upgrades to the gym. The transition way behind Abrams, so where Abrams and the middle school meet. All of that work back there, the amphitheater, the transportation food service upgrades. There's flooding basically that goes through back there. If you've been back there, that's desperately needed. Roof patching at Central Elementary. So there's the patching and the replacement. The patching, we're hopeful will keep us from having to do the replacement.
Is this related to the birds or is this different?
Well, it's related. I mean, the patching, the area with the patching is related to the birds, but it's also related to just wear and tear. The other though is an actual replacement that needs to be done to ground. I can give you amounts for each one of these, but they're all 200,000 or less. The gym flooring is 75. The transition way is estimated at 150. The upgrades to the transportation food service area are estimated at 150. The roof patching is estimated at 150.
Which gym floor?
Replacement of the gym floor and bleachers at Central. Carpet and tile needs to be replaced throughout Central Elementary. If you've been through there, you've seen that. That's $100,000. These, I'm giving you things that, you know, you can give me feedback on if any of these are of interest to you, and I can go more deeply. And then the other, just very quickly, excuse me, would be additional funding. Could request that the county take some of that and put a little more money in the CRM fund, the Central Reserve Maintenance. We've had to dip into that already significantly for the bats and for the HVAC and for all kinds of things. So that would be a great contingency to have. It's not something that can ever be used on anything but that. It carries from year to year. So I'll stop talking and you can give me any feedback you want. We do have to make a decision next month about what.
Just on the CIP, I'm not our committee member and I'm not involved in these conversations. But I'll note that through multiple years of conversations with Board of Supervisors, their ideal is not to have these years where we get 12 or 13 buses and then years where we get 0 or 1. But to take our replacement cycle, whatever it is that this division stands for on replacement cycle, and to carve up the number of buses that we have on the road, divided by the number of years, et cetera. And that's how many we should have in our replacement cycle. And I know that there are years in the CIP where we have a big ticket item and so they move things around, but you know, we have some years behind us, not in the not too recent past where it's 12 or 13, and then we have a year where it's 1. And if the answer is 4 or 5, then like, kind of feel like we should fight hard to keep 4 or 5 on the CIP.
We're asking for 3 next year.
3 next year, and does that fit I mean, at some point, the 12 and 13 or whatever those are, those huge numbers are, they're gonna come, they're coming, and so I guess my argument is I'd rather fight for 4 a year instead of 3, and then not have to replace 13 15 years from now. But I mean, I think that's one of the things that I can most consistently hear from supervisors, regardless of whether they're actively on the board today or have been on the board in the last 6 years, is I'm tired of seeing up and down, like, why is it that we don't have a consistent replacement cycle? I feel like it's a conversation every year, but I would love to see a smooth cash flow, because then our supervisors who are responsible for setting the tax rate don't have to give constituents whiplash either as they set the property rate.
When I arrived, I'd have to go back to be quoted on this, but I feel like when I first got here, it was in July, and there had been, say, 10? Does that sound right? 3 years ago?
COVID money did a lot of things and mixed up our schedules.
Other than that, I think it's been.
Mr. Gretz,
Yes, sir.
I am a CIP member of the school board, and just for informational purposes, the cost of a new school bus, just one this year, over $170,000.
That's right. Yeah, we've got 185. Yes, sir.
Not gonna get any cheaper either, are they?
No, every one of them has air conditioning, tinted windows. They have automatic snow chains that we don't need.
We're just spoiling these kids, aren't we?
Yep,
Getting them to school safely?
yep, that's it.
Rascals.
We're
Everybody's
paying for
got their own
on-spot
opinion.
chains on buses.
I don't know that we're paying extra for that, but they do come with them. I don't think you
They
can
own
get them
every
without them.
bus.
They may be standard and not separable.
That's an expensive feature,
It is.
and it's prone to failure.
Well, if they even call for snow, schools are canceled, so.
Yeah. And they only work at a
Canceling
certain,
schools.
they only work at a certain speed. So you have to be going, 20 to 30 miles an hour to deploy them. And they fail a lot. And I just don't know why we'd have them on a school bus.
When I was growing up, if it snowed, we just walked both ways uphill.
I can certainly do a presentation for you or have the company
no,
come and talk
I'll-
about that. I don't think you can get them without them. It's not a feature I think that we're asking to be added. I'm happy to look into. Okay, so any other feedback about Turnback? Any direction for me in terms of what we can be working on in
I
preparation
would
for
like to see
November?
the security continue to be focused on. It seems to be one of the biggest mentions of the community. Personally, I think we are well behind what a lot of other states and divisions do here in our county. And I also think that's something that both boards, I don't want to speak for anybody else on this board or the other board, but I think that's probably something that we could get behind a lot quicker than replacing tile on floor that is still gonna be tile on floor.
Are there any of those in particular that?
I would love to see a variety of them. That way we see a lot of options, we see what might work best and we can have conversations around that. But I mean, it's just hearing what other divisions are doing, like we're fairly far behind and obviously these conversations are not meant to have because we want to prepare for that, but like we also have to prepare for that
Sure.
at the same time. And so that's just my standpoint. I would love to see more conversation centered around security because I think that's something that we all could probably have some good conversations on countywide.
Yeah, I'd like to see the IDs that you can 911. I think that's a good thing to have.
I think there are probably some relatively inexpensive ones that we can do that add just additional confidence and communication. I don't want to drop the ball on making sure that we remain in alignment with our goal to fix infrastructure as well. And so I suspect that, writing up a priority list, some kind of like rank order, and for me, including, some of the bathrooms, we don't gotta do them all at once. It's not realistic to do them all at once. It took us how many years to get an RFP on the 4 bathrooms we want to replace now, but I want to stay true to that communication, which was, we don't want to give it to you all at once or now, ask for us on a continual basis. And so if we can find that nice, sweet compromise of let's do the things that are cheap, that are going to give us the most bang for our buck on security, rely on CIP for some of it as well, because we're not going to be able to do everything. And then make sure that we're taking care of our building.
Yeah, I think the CRM work too. For the unknown.
We don't have a lot left this year. State.
Well, I think this is also where we've touched on it before. I'll touch on it again because I am a very firm proponent of communication. Our 2 boards, this board and the county, knowing what we need and having both very aware of a laundry list of 79 things, if it's 79 things. The county has to know what we're working with, because I respect the fact that money is not endless, but it also makes our jobs very tough when both boards are not on the same page. And I'm not saying there's disconnect, but I'm also saying that we can improve our communication so that way the county knows what the schools need, and we're not always retroactive in that communication to be like, oh man, didn't even know you needed that. And so we touched on it again, I'll say it again because I'm a big proponent of this. These monthly meetings, I think, are very important between the Board of Supervisors and the school board. That way, both boards know what's going on, and we're not like, oh man, one of the 5 may have looked at the track before we're talking about a track project. Like, we all need to be on the same page countywide as it relates to this, because the schools could receive a ton of money. I don't necessarily think they need an endless budget by any means, but it makes it very tough with these conversations when we're saying we got all these things we really want to work on, and there is a little bit of a gap in communication when not everybody knows what exactly is needed within the schools. And I think that's on both sides. I'm not placing any blame on a separate board. I just think we could all do a better job. So I'll voice it a lot until I see it happen. I think our communication can improve countywide.
I think one of the things that'll be useful and helpful is the county is moved and the staff are working on increasing the CIP process from a 4 to a 5-year window.
Mhm.
And so, there's a couple things that popped up that weren't on the CIP before, like, a new stadium building, et cetera, it wasn't in the last 4 years. It's here now, and it's important to talk about, but also like there's a 4 or 5-year plan for a reason. And so I think that the extra year hopefully will give us some additional visibility. But if we need something other than the CIP plan to communicate, like what are the things that are top of mind or that we need to be thinking about or working on, then we need to have a document somewhere.
Mhm. All right.
Move on to 25?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I obviously we just began this fiscal year. I don't have much to say. I'll just tell you, we'll certainly be watching the operations line because of some of the needs that we've had early and the HVAC concerns that we have. There are supplemental appropriations for you in here, not in this document, but the other. Do you have any questions about this? Really don't have anything to point out. These have been sent over. They're gonna be on the November, I want to say 16th, whatever the next Board of Supervisors agenda.
Oh, right. So this is one of the things I talked about when I was last at the Board of Supervisors, is that they have a threshold at which any additional appropriation or budget changes need to have a public hearing. I don't remember exactly what the percentage of their total budget is, but this qualifies for, it trips that line, and so they're having a
This one
public hearing.
doesn't, but the one that they've got, we sent the other one over a couple of months ago.
It's not 3 million, it's the other one.
Yeah, this is 3,000.
Oh, 3,000, sorry, I thought I saw 3 million, I need new
It's
glasses.
yeah, it's the other.
It's the other one. So there will be a public hearing on some of our supplemental appropriations because it trips whatever critical threshold of the county budget that requires a public hearing. But no, I guess not 3,000. I just misread it.
had that threshold in here.
I think it's 1% of the whole or something. Sorry, my memory fails me. That was a couple of weeks ago. And lots happened since. And it was just something that the county attorney, I think Mr. Whelan, indicated would be in good faith and in alignment with.
Yeah, it's 1%
1%.
of total expenditures. Sorry. Any other questions about 25? Okay,
26?
I have absolutely nothing for you on 26. We just don't have any information. Yeah.
About
Sometime before October next year.
Let's hope.
AP psychology textbook adoption.
So this process has begun. The textbooks have been available for review and they will continue to be available. I'm just trying to pull it up here. And the information is all, since the 9th of September. So next month, November 13th is when we would ask you to. Any questions about the process? It's the same process that we use. There's a team, the books are listed, I think in the other memo. They're available for the public to take a look at.
Mr. Gretz,
Yes, sir.
if I was to stop by and want to look at the textbooks, do I need to call ahead or they're readily available?
They're readily available.
Thank
They're in the front office right now, I believe.
How about the Piedmont Regional Education Program?
So we participate in a consortium, we refer to it as PrEP, obviously, and we are the fiscal agent for that consortium. And each year they have to renew this MOA with us in order for us to continue to be their fiscal agent. There's nothing new about this or no changes. It's just something that has to be done every year. So any questions about it? It's just an MOU. It needs to be
To clarify, it doesn't impact our budget or cost us money, but Ms. Grasser and staff do the work of being the fiscal agent for PrEP.
That's right. And their bylaws call for this.
How about the 23-24 accreditation and accountability results?
The main event. As Ms. Suarez is coming to the podium, I'll just say again publicly that she is exceptional, does just such a wonderful job of managing all this data and educating everybody about it, making great decisions about it. Happy to have you here. Thank you, Gemma.
A lot of data, so I'll give brief highlights and I'm happy to go back in, but we're very pleased that all of our schools are fully accredited this year. I went back and looked, it's been 11 consecutive years that we've been accredited to date. So this is looking at a state accreditation. So in addition to SOL pass rates, it's gonna look at growth, recovery, so students that have never passed an SOL before but have now, progress of English learners, and then it also looks at absenteeism. So these are our elementary schools. All grade level 1, we saw continue to see growth for English and math, and then we saw pretty substantial improvements in our chronic absenteeism levels compared to last year, so we were level 1 across the board.
Could I ask what the R10 reference?
Yeah, so R10 is you make level 1. So we didn't meet the benchmark of 15%, but we made level 1 because we reduced it by 10%, the failure rate.
Gotcha. Honorable mention for getting it lower, but not quite above the bar where.
Sure. So for federal accountability, chronic absenteeism, you have to be below 15%.
It's credit.
We're getting there.
reducing
Carrie
failure.
did make it out right.
No, totally. I just wanted to.
And then this was sorry.
Nope, good.
This was a breakout of all of our subgroups for English and math. And again, we increased to level 1 across all of our subgroups. The STAR by students with disabilities in English is the same principle as that chronic absenteeism. The benchmark is 75%, and we didn't make 75%, but we did improve by 10%. Middle school, we were level 1 for overall for English and math, and then we also made R10 for chronic absenteeism. Science definitely, continues to be an area of focus. We're not we're in line with where the rest of the state is performing, but it's definitely, since COVID has been, science hasn't historically been somewhere we've struggled, I think. Support and resources, for science and social studies haven't really, mirrored what we've been doing since COVID for English and math. And then there were those couple of years right after, COVID, when we were coming back in hybrid schedules, and we really, at the elementary level, were focused on reading and math, and we taught science and social studies, but it was more reading about that content versus some of the direct instruction to the level that we had prior to COVID. So I think that's no longer the case, and it's been several years that we've gotten science and social studies and moved it back to a unit time outside of the literacy block. But we're seeing those students who experience that type of instruction are now in middle school, high school, and it's showing up definitely in our science and history data. And then subgroups for the middle school, math and English, economically disadvantaged made R10, and students with disabilities for math. So those 3 level 3s in English, basically, once you've been at a level 2 for 4 or more years, you can't make R10 anymore, and you have to make it outright or you stay a level 3. So we will have to hit 75%.
Black English, what's man?
Yeah, and we did in Black English improve 11%, but like I said, no R10 because of the number of years at level 2. So we have to hit 75%.
Are there specific strategies that we employ to figure out root causes of the subgroup differences?
We have found in research supports, like for our Black student subgroup, well, economically disadvantaged Hispanic, vocabulary instruction is a big one.
And so in terms of like finding ways to see us through to get us back at par, does that mean that we engage in small group and pullouts using vocabulary techniques, or is there a?
Sure, so more direct instruction in tier 1, more both all of our schools have a small group in Fluco focus time where there's direct small group instruction for those students that need it and those skills.
We know that's being utilized by those groups.
Yes, but they don't have a choice.
Yeah, it's
So
compulsory.
last year, all in, I know a lot of the tutoring and things like that, a lot of school divisions were doing it, after school or offering it. We decided that we were gonna build it into the school day, so it is part of our curriculum, and what, students are getting what they need, and it's not optional.
Are we hearing any feedback on its efficacy to date in terms of whether the individuals who are doing the hands-on work are seeing true growth from the students, or if there are other resources they need?
Because we're seeing it, I mean, this again is, SOL data, so it's one point in time per student on that day, but we definitely have seen across subgroups, improvements in our map data. You'll see some other, especially at the early grades in like our PALS reading data. And like I said, even here, subgroups, we're continuing to see an uptick with the exception of students with disabilities. I will say though, we're holding stagnant, but we've also seen an incredible increase in the number of identification of special education students. So when you take those students out of a larger population reporting group, right, and put them in a smaller reporting category, typically you see a decline. So even though it looks like we're kind of holding steady, that's something to keep in mind too. And then high school, again, level 1 overall for English and math, seeing similar with science. Chronic absenteeism, this is our one school that we did not make level 1, but we did improve from a 3 to a level 2 with R10. Still a bit to go from that 15% benchmark, but we did see some big decreases there. Graduation and dropout rate pretty consistent, and graduation rate well above benchmark. And then that college and career readiness, which is a fairly new reporting category since last year, so there's no 3-year average, but meeting that benchmark.
So I know that we use some all-in funding in order to help fight chronic absenteeism. Obviously, when we look at this data, we're seeing trend in the right direction across multiple schools, which is why we're getting our tens. Do we believe that additional staff? Do we need additional staff to help fight this? It's obviously a cultural, not Fluvanna specific, but we've seen improvements. My guess is it is not absent the effect of new staff members. Like, do we just need additional folks to help provide that tether and get the kids to school? Or do we think that we have the resources we need to curb this?
The models that have been held up that are successful and that the governor held up when he released that money are models that employ a significant number of staff. Right next door, it's 10 full-time positions who do nothing but attendance.
10, and what's the student population?
Five,
A little-
yeah.
little more.
So, and how many do we have effectively in the?
31.
No, I know the student population, but the staff that
Two.
do. So we have a little more than half of their student population, maybe 60%, and we have 1/5 of their staff. So is this something that we should be thinking about or talking about during budget cycle?
It's certainly something that we can consider. Absolutely.
What do those positions do when you say they are solely focused on attendance?
Oh, and when I say two, one of them is,
I was gonna
that's not
say.
her only focus. She also works a lot with like students experiencing homelessness, right? Which those students, tend to have attendance concerns. So we really, I guess technically have one full-time attendance aide that helps coordinate at schools, like who are these students, goes out and home visits and really, making strong relationships with those families and those students and encouraging, attendance at school. And
It's that.
it's really focused on what are the barriers, right? That your students are not coming to school, whether it be, any number of reasons. I think that especially at the high school, most prevalent is, anxiety of students. And so there's a lot of overlap when we say, we have one person, 1.5 people paid out of all-in funds for attendance. We also have, I know Caitlin Harler-Berner as our mental health coordinator, right? She is doing a lot to support attendance in the schools just because of that overlap and some of the reasons of why.
It's a lot. I know in that division in particular, it's a lot of phone calls, a lot of work, just touching base, but it's home visits, it's building relationships, trying to get kids in school.
I'd like to the extent that in future meetings, we can have this conversation. I'd like to learn more about the success of Louisa. Their
That's what I was gonna say. I would love to see.
And see the data.
I mean, Coach Oak.
No, it's okay.
I was just saying, I think we're on the same line. If we went from 1 to 5, what could we expect to see an improvement on? And looking at this specifically, that high school number skyrockets compared to the other schools in the county. I don't know if it's an easy answer as to why. I'm sure it's not, but like, hang on, well, I guess before one thought that I threw in. What is the best reasoning as to why that jumps up to, I mean, granted, we're down now, which I think we're seeing improvement, which is good.
Yes.
But we're still really high there compared to other schools, like what is,
Well, I don't think this is a personal opinion, but it's easier for a high school student to be at home on their own, right? Whether their parent
Right.
knows about it or not, versus, when a 5 or 6-year-old is at home, I think plays a little bit of it, but I think some of the mental health and anxiety that we're seeing is a lot.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for that conversation. I look forward to trying to learn more about this so we can know, as Mr. Reed said, I'd love to know what we think we could do with an extra couple of staff people, what's realistic.
Yeah, I think it's a broader conversation than just staff to do attendance, because in that example alone, there's additional staff who do nothing but attendance, but there's also a fully staffed center. There's a Saturday school program. There's, in addition to saying, if you don't come to school, you're gonna have to make up the time, but then there's a full-time program waiting for them to come and make up that time. It's a lot more than just the staffing for the person to make phone calls. We can have it. I just want to point out in that example alone, there's a significant amount of money that's being poured into the whole wraparound service to deal with that.
Our students are worth it.
Then these are the achievement gaps for the high school. We made level 1 across the board, including outright and, for example, Black English. We met the 75% benchmark this year, which we haven't in quite some time, as well as economically disadvantaged. So, and then we did make it for SPED again with that R10. You can go to the next. And then I wanted to point out, so our English learner data, so this is English proficiency on an WIDA access test that all of those students are federally required to take. And we have been struggling for quite some time to meet federal benchmarks. Since COVID, we had, we increased, I think, almost 40% our population of English learners and took some time to catch up for staffing. I'd like to say that this past year, we did something dramatic with curriculum or instruction and support, but quite honestly, I think attendance for the student population improved, and I think that did impact achievement data, but I also think this past year, we were able to have one EL teacher at each school, and so they weren't, being split between two schools, and they had, manageable caseloads of between 20 and 30-ish, and I think that really impacted a lot of the success.
I was gonna ask you if this is, so when I see data like this, I immediately think sample size. That like you don't get a swing from 30 to 60 unless your total N is 30 people or something, but based on what you said, how would you estimate the
So our
overall?
sample size between spring of 23 and 24 is very consistent. There might have been a difference of like.
Oh, yeah, is it like, is it like 120
Yes,
kids?
actually it was 118.
Okay.
So
No, that's useful. That helps me kind of get a sense for where it's at. It's still, I mean, that's pretty dramatic improvement.
we did meet federal benchmark, and like I said, last time we did, I think was in 2018.
So something, you may be covering this next, but I just think everybody should look for this one to be a challenge in the future, because with the new model, the guidance has gone from the 11 semester rule, which essentially is saying that students who don't speak English as a primary language would have 11 semesters to master the language before their test. It's moving next year to 3. So
that won't impact these results, but
No,
it will,
just
yeah,
these-
but it will
these are the
impact
students.
accreditation and those subgroups that you saw in the previous
So-
slides.
A non-English speaker who transfers into our division will have 3 school semesters, which is 3/4 of a year, to become proficient in English enough to take standardized tests.
And not just English, like history, for example, right? Know enough of the history. And we did write some letters, and if you look at research, it takes the average adult 7 semesters to acquire any kind of academic proficiency in a second. So
yeah, I didn't mean to send you down a rabbit.
I mean, this is important, like, that's just a ridiculous standard, that's unrealistic, and, we'll see divisions that are more urban and have a lot more non-English speakers, their SOL scores are just gonna tank, because my Duolingo on day 275, if you put a standardized test in front of me, there's not a chance. And I don't know why we would expect our young students to be able to do this.
and I'm gonna go through this very quickly. So this is where accreditation factored in growth and recovery in English learner. This is just straight out students passed, students didn't. That end of the year SOL test. Green is we saw improvement from previous year. State ranking green, we saw improvements there. So pretty much across the board in math, with the exceptions of grade 3 and 7. Geometry looks also like a big decline. there were quite a number of students that were distance taking Apex this year in geometry that, I think that impacted.
I have a quick question on that. What, to the best of your knowledge, what makes grade 3 and grade 7 more difficult than all the rest of the grades?
That grade 7 test every year. And then, grade 3, you'll see it in math and reading. It's the first time they've ever had that type of test experience. And we really have gotten away from, we don't want to teach to a test, and we don't want to, have them take those types of assessments over and over again just so they get used to it, right? Like, we want to know what they know. So it's gonna be lower at grade 3 unless we revert back to, some of those practices, which, and like I said, grade 7 math, as long as I can remember, it's I'm not a very good math student, but I do, looking at the curriculum for grade 7 math, it is a challenging math.
Is it a big
curriculum.
jump from 6 to 7 math wise? I mean, it's been so
Yes,
long.
in the
since I've been
concept,
sixth,
in the
seventh grade,
concept,
but-
yes,
Okay,
concepts in 7, and then you don't see them, like grade 8, you see an uptick, but those concepts that I think are very challenging in grade 7, you don't see as much anymore moving on in the rest of your math career, so.
Grade 7 is also this cohort that I've been looking at and following the data since I joined this board. They were born during the economic downturn. And they're gonna be like 11 or something, 12? I think I was 13 as a freshman. So like, they're born in a time of economic instability, and there has been one grade every single year that has kind of been lower in scores, and we've talked about it like every single year. And I believe that they're in 7th grade now. And so it is, you kind of are a product of what you're born into, and there were some really rough years.
And you can, and that played, like, if you look diagonally, so 7th grade was 58% this year, but when they were in 6th grade, that cohort was 61, and that is an anomaly. That is a very low pass rate score for 6th grade than what we typically see.
So it's both hard as a functional unit in 7th grade and a cohort that has traditionally struggled.
And then, because then you'll see 7th grade, that specific cohort again plays true in reading, and you can see where they were in 6th grade as well. And then you'll see the same thing with 3rd grade in reading. But otherwise, across the board, we saw gains in pass rates as well as state rankings for reading.
Is this an argument to try to lower class sizes in 4th grade next budget cycle if we have a cohort that's particularly struggling? On the 3rd grade, some of it's the learned behavior, right? And like learning to test and all of that, and COVID era hangover. But like, is there an argument to be made that if we were to invest in class sizes and reducing class sizes to help particular grade levels that are struggling, that next year's 4th grade would be the place to do it?
So we have done it the past couple of years because we've had COVID money, right, to hire extra teachers to for class size. So at our elementary grades, K-4, we've definitely, been leveraging that. And then we've also been mindful of, it used to be like, we just always had this number of teachers in this grade, where we've been really trying to, all right, what's our enrollment looking like for this grade this year, and how many teachers do we need to keep, an elementary class size ratio at, 2nd grade around 20, and 3rd grade around 21, 22.
is our grade 3, how do we relate to other counties that don't separate elementary school? So obviously we have K2 in Fluvanna, then there's a big jump to a new school with new teachers, new surroundings, like, oh my gosh, most kids are nervous to go to a completely separate school. I lived this last year. How does that relate to other counties that might be a K-5 in one building, and the teachers get to start, they basically have a relationship with kids before they even get there?
Right. I mean, we could look at specific schools that we know, like Louisa, right,
Yeah.
that has 2 K-5. I mean, you can also kind of, there's the state, which
Because we have
includes.
rock star teachers in
Yeah.
3rd grade. Like, I just want to make that very clear for anybody listening. We have rock star 3rd grade
Yeah.
teachers, so I'm curious, and I know nobody's insinuating anything on this board. I'm just curious if that could play into it, is our school structure where they leave one school and go to another, plus you add on the SOLs, and is it just a big overwhelming year for a third grade student or?
Possibly, because we do see a little bit usually at fifth grade, right? It's just a
Mhm.
transitionary year when we were all one K-5 school. We were in school improvement for about 4 years there, so maybe I won't make that comparison, but there are other reasons too. So, I think, we do see 3, 5, and 8, and grade 8.
That's what I'm curious. We have a very different structure than other
Yeah.
counties and.
Yeah, and I do think, those ages and just the transition could.
Mhm.
Sixth grade was terrible when I was coming up because you'd move into the middle school. All the boys start to smell terrible, hormones, like sixth grade was like a lost year for some kids back. If you're in a K-5 and then a 6 to 8 model. So I'm not surprised to see some of that as well. And none of my comments were an indictment on any of our existing.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. I kind of just wanted to give them a shout out because it sounds kind of like we're harping on third grade, but we're
I
not.
think it's,
Those
I mean,
those
you can
teachers are
see,
awesome.
we were, in 22, 23, though, very, also cohorts, right, matter, so this past year's third grade cohort was a little different of a cohort compared to the previous year, so, but in 22, 23, our third grade, we're typically in line with the state, and I do think I attribute that to, our wonderful teachers, because like I said, we are not teaching to the tests and we are not, giving benchmarks that look like SOL tests every 4 weeks to, so.
It looks like Louise is at 66. Or whatever that's.
And then again, science, no green, we're a little bit, lower than the state, at grade 5 and 8 this year, although we were pretty in line last year. I will say, this past year was the first test year of the new standards, and they had, it took quite some time to get back our scores for retakes for students, and so some students, parents probably opted at 8th grade not to have them do those retakes. I don't know, anytime it takes, multiple weeks to equate scores on a new form, I kind of wonder what's taken so long when you get your scores back. So, but like I said, I do think there is some truth in this data in terms of those students that were, in upper elementary during COVID, maybe not having having science and history content taught through the literacy block. We were doing the best that we could, but we know that wasn't ideal, and I think it's showing up in our middle school, high school science and social studies data now. Virginia Studies saw really strong improvements at 4th grade. We saw little bits of improvements in some history classes at the high school. But again, civics definitely at 8th grade continuing to be much lower than the state. So we are focusing this year. Next year we'll have all new all new science standards, all new history standards. So we are focused this year on preparing curriculum and assessments and going after resources that can help support those new standards. I will say specific to history, we've had, I think this will be the 3rd history revisions of SOLs. However, they haven't changed the test since 2010. So we're being tested on 2010 standards, but we're teaching, so.
So we've had a conversation last couple of years. So we have coordinators and then aides from math and English. We had a conversation at least multiple years about having a coordinator specifically for social science and for science. To what extent would having a staff member help alleviate some of or aid teachers in identifying students or implementing curriculum? How helpful would a coordinator be if it needs to be as broad as science and social science or something like that?
I think it helped tremendously.
I will say, the year after COVID, we had no literacy person, just me, and we had one math person for the division. And then, we now have, two literacy division people to help support me and a math division person. And it is helpful. And for science and social studies only gets me. So,
Fluvanna used to have somebody for social studies, because when I was in Goochland, we did not, and I called over here to work with them.
I don't know who it would have been.
No, I can't
I
ever
mean, that
recall
was
the time we
15
had a
years ago.
science.
I'd have been in grad schools. so.
And then our kindergarten data for, so this is the VKRP that looks at math skill, readiness skills, but also looks at some social emotional regulation and social skills. Those two are a survey that the teacher takes in response to the student. And then math is administered much like PALS. So you can see for math, we went from 82% to meeting benchmark in K to in the spring 89%, well above state at 80%. I will say this was the first year we saw a decline in our how teachers were reporting students with in kindergarten with social skills, but you know, end of the year they have higher expectations as they should. So we
I have
know
a
that.
quick question on that too. How actively, I probably should know this because I just had one come through kindergarten. How actively are we using Chromebooks at very young ages like this, like for kindergarten and?
So so none of this a student would interact with a Chromebook for. Are you talking about for the assessment?
No,
itself?
no, no.
Oh,
In the classroom, like throughout the year, are Chromebooks?
I don't see them very much.
Okay. no,
We
that-
we don't,
okay,
we
good.
don't, so until they get to middle school, they're not assigned a Chromebook. They live in carts in the classroom. I see them fairly regularly in third and fourth grade.
And that was my question. I know that they're
yeah.
getting more and more common
Yeah.
in the classroom. in
Third and fourth
elementary
grade,
schools, so-
second grade a little bit more. I don't ever see them in kindergarten,
Okay.
hardly ever in kindergarten.
Just
but-
curious if there's any correlation to increased screen time in a classroom and decreased social skills.
Like I said, this was the first year
Mhm.
we'd seen that, and like I said, it's a survey that. It's a survey that a teacher fills
Right.
out based on the student, and you know, if I'm a kindergarten teacher, I have different expectations for a five-year-old at the beginning of the year than I do the end of the year, so. And then our PALS reading, so moving forward this year, it's transitioned to the VALS assessment. But so this will be the last year you'll see PALS. We are still trying to figure out, we're still finishing up that assessment now, although we have heard from divisions around us that have given that assessment, they're seeing anywhere between 15% and 50% increase in the students that are identified below benchmark on the new assessment. So not quite sure how that's going to play out for us yet, but this is very in line with what we typically see. I mean, you can see huge gains, particularly in kindergarten and second grade, and in the year, you know, 95%, anywhere between 80 and 95% on or above, and definitely well above where the rest of the state is performing K2 in readings. We have wonderful teachers.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
I remember hearing that the state added math testing to its list of like approved tests to replace some other form of standardized. I don't remember exactly which one it is. Could you tell me a little bit about how it's,
So last year, we were reporting on that legislated required assessments, the Virginia growth assessments. Students in grades 3 through 8 were required to take them fall and spring. There's new legislation passed last spring that divisions could continue to do that or submit a proposal to use some other growth measure. So we submitted and were approved to use MAP. So we were able to eliminate those two tests in reading and math. So essentially 4 tests, right? For those students each year, and are just continuing with our normal MAP administration.
and so we were already implementing them even though they weren't required. And now we're able to get rid of a couple of required tests because we're doing one that is actually useful.
Right, and we had a lot of conversation about, were we gonna phase MAP out? Really glad we stuck with it, and teachers said, you know, that they needed that data, so.
Me too. I'm super happy that happened. It's good to know that we have an absolute fewer tests, both in isolation and in terms of usefulness. Nothing worse than a useless test.
real quick, not to interrupt, I got to sneak out and get back to work real quick. Andre's got it.
And then I did want to save some time to look at the new accreditation system, so I can just real quick, so here's a look at our gifted enrollment. I thought it would be helpful to look at it, division beside gifted, and then Josh, if you want to skip, maybe go to the next slide. That's just a breakout. I think this is probably the most helpful chart, so you can see relative to division ethnicity breakout. You know, we want our subgroup breakouts for representing our gifted population to be closer to that 7% of all students. So
Do we have strategies in place? So like, you know, when I looked at these numbers before, and then as we were talking about it earlier, I pulled them back up and scanned through, and clearly 17 divided by 3240 for Black identified as gifted on 2021 is well below our population statistics. And I don't fundamentally believe in any way, shape, or form that Black students are less gifted than other students. So it's about identification.
and same with our Hispanic, and several years ago, we moved to a nonverbal, right, to the Naglieri, so that we were taking out that vocabulary piece, right, that we mentioned that sometimes we found to be a barrier in those two subgroups.
To be clear, I just
would-
picked
yeah.
that number.
Sure,
I meant
yeah.
across the board.
Yeah.
I don't fundamentally
Yeah.
believe that.
I mean, I know we're not unique. I know there's been quite a few divisions around us that have really revamped their identification of gifted students, and they have different qualifying measures depending on your subgroup.
No.
So
Change the measuring stick, not the.
I don't, you know, we have not chosen to pursue that, but
I had read somewhere some statistics on the like relationship between the race of the student and the race of the teacher, and this is just that more students are identified as gifted when the population that's teaching them is ultimately more representative of their identity as well. And so I hope that we continue to go out and hire and try to find and just have a community and a staff that look like our community. But I'd love to make sure that if a kid is gifted, that they end up on this sheet regardless of how they identify or how they look.
and most importantly, that all kids are getting their needs met, whether
Oh, yeah, whether gifted or
Yep.
otherwise, this is just a symptom, right? This is a symptom of a broader thing, and you know, it's really hard to succeed or to want to put in effort when, if you are not being told that you're talented or good at things. You know, there's nothing more demoralizing than working hard and doing good things and not getting recognition, and if it's systematic, it's even worse.
So here's our governor's school enrollment data compared to last year, and very similar demographics. Go to the next one. PSAT and SAT, well, PSAT, SAT data, remember that's being offered since last year as optional. So we did at 8th grade have a little bit of a decline in participation. And then we did see an increase in those 8th grade students who are meeting benchmarks. If you go to the next slide on grade 9, we saw, you know, again, decrease in participation, but increase in students meeting benchmarks. So, and then grade 10, I mean, I think we see the same trend. As it relates to the PSAT, just, you know, less students are taking it, but the ones that are taking it are performing better. Grade 11, we actually did see a slight, no, we saw a decrease in participation. Yep, keep going. So.
Is that because it's optional? Is that because college is less prioritized these days? Is that because they're like,
Yes.
oh, SATs are years down the road, I don't need to worry about it? Like, what do you think?
And we made it optional, because because we were seeing on these days that we were having these tests, all of a sudden, all these kids weren't coming to school.
Right.
So then we went to optional. Counselors were, you know, a lot of colleges just are test optional now. We are starting to see a slight shift back in the other direction though, so we are keeping an eye on that. And then we certainly, you know, want students that want to take it to be able to, so we've, you know, implemented, we have like sliding scales for the fees and things like that, because I think it was last year, right? Was the first, or this year was the first, last year's budget, this was the first year that we were passing that cost along to the parents, so.
Did I hear that I remember being in a building in the last couple of weeks and hearing that some of the test funding, that we couldn't provide targeted discounts or sliding scales for individual students, that the discount had to be applied to all students evenly. Something related to either were we talking to someone together in the high school maybe? I believe that there was something related to being able to provide discounts for individuals who have economic need, but that what they did was just decrease the per capita cost of students by a threshold of how much need we have, and that it was implemented universally instead of targeted to those who were in need, which seems inefficient and not really in the spirit of.
No, I have to go back and check my last understanding when I talked to high school last month about it. I thought that they were, it was based on the individual student's need, and
Okay, I might have heard something different, or
I will look.
I retain a lot of information, putting it in context can be difficult. But I do believe that I heard that it was not individualized to student need, but that it was a straight across the board discount, which is honestly helpful, but not really in spirit of sliding scale.
And I know there has been asked from the, from the high school to, as I think Ms. Bruce might be including it in her budget ask, but, since we are having a reduction in participation, what's the possibility of at least it being a budget consideration to, at least for the students that, I think it was only like I don't say they only, but I think it was like a $20,000 budget line item. But, what's if there could be consideration for students that want to take it, for us being able to pay that fee.
I hope that trickles up to the superintendent either through surveys or through block parties, if that's what the schools are interested in, so we can get it on our roadmap.
This was College Board National Recognition Awards, where they had to earn a 3 or greater on 2 or more AP exams, and some other stipulations about GPA. So for the number of students that we had earning different recognition. And then SAT, they don't have the state global, that'll be available later in October, but we did see class of 24 saw for SAT did see about a 5% increase in participation. But we also saw improvement on the SAT scores, so particularly in the area of reading. And then again, continuing to see kind of a little bit of an increase in enrollment in AP score or courses. And so more participation in the AP tests. And if you look on the next slide, even though we're seeing more students taking the test, we're also seeing an increase in the percent of students that are scoring 3 or higher. So.
Oh, I guess it's right there. So the universal pass rate, reaching a 3 on an AP exam is less than a quarter. That's pretty wild. I didn't remember there being such like fail rates when I was in school. That seems like a dramatic number, and either it means more participation writ large, or
they're hard tests.
I remember.
We do see a lot of our kids get 2s, almost a 3.
It's a shame when that happens, but I remember them being incredibly difficult, but seeing the statistic of the inverse of the pass rate is a little stark.
And then these are all the different areas for industry credentialing, and it's continued on the next slide. We did see a decrease in the total number of industry credentials across all the areas, but we saw a small increase in completer pass rate. The biggest category was we had fewer students taking the that WISE financial test in comparison to previous years. Seemed to be what was impacting it.
Do we have an idea why 70 less students wanted to do the WISE program? I don't know. Okay. That seems like a heroic cliff. I mean, in some ways, it's back to trend from 2021, but a 70 student difference.
My question was, did we just have an anomaly of extra kids the past 2 years, right? Wanted to get, I don't know.
Totally.
And then this was our cohort data for the class of 24, so breakdown of graduation and dropout rates that we saw previously in the high school accreditation data. And then diploma types, the breakout. Any questions?
I just want to thank you. I know it's a lot. I know that every year you come here, I'm sure you dread me preparing you with questions. And I don't do it to be mean or because I take some enjoyment from asking questions. More so, like, I love the fact that this comes out in a time when we have a handful of months to think about budget priorities. And when, you know, we get so few and granted, like standardized testing is one of many tools, but like, I don't know that this board receives more comprehensive data as to like how things are going or in what direction students are trending, or this grade needs more attention than others than to have this. And so we have, you know, some odd months to go through our budget priorities and talk about all the things we could do or all the things we could ask for the county. And, you know, I'm looking at a list of, do we need more more folks to help with absenteeism? What's up with, you know, 3rd grade and 7th grade? Do we need a coordinator for social science and for science? And so all of these things really germinate meaningful ideas to the budget process, because I genuinely believe that the budget should be representative of our goals as an institution and a division. And this data is honestly really helpful to figure out where maybe we need a little extra touch.
I have a question to play off of that. Just along the lines of where my brain has been the past couple of weeks. Is this data presented to the Board of Supervisors? Like, is it shared with them so they can, if they would like, dive into this?
Yes, it's on our public, it's on our board docs and our public website. There's also, we put out like, we publish, well, a link to the school quality profile. So you can see like their accreditation and pass rate data on BDOE's website. I mean,
Do we, and
but
if we
no,
don't?
in my, not,
We don't do
in,
a
I don't think
separate
we've ever done a.
No, I know, I'm just saying, and if we don't, this is not a criticism, this is a question.
Mhm.
Do we physically email it to them to say, county, here's what our schools are seeing? We would love to share this with you. And I think this is again where these one-on-one meetings come into play. But this is just a way for us to, I can pull the rookie card because I wasn't in this chair last October. I think this is great because exactly what you're saying, like this is where a lot of our questions are gonna come from, but if they don't see this data, and it's not that they don't care, I'm not saying that, but if they don't see it, they just hear from us, we just want X positions.
Well, or like, for example, we've lost about 20 kids in enrollment for English learners between transfers out and not enough picking up. And when we look at SOQs at budget season, when Ms. Grasser asked me, we probably could make it with three and not 4 in terms of, you know, meeting SOQ budget wise. But I will say it's been tremendously impactful this past year, being able to have one teacher at each school to, again, their caseloads are, you know, still not small. They serve anywhere between 25 to 40, depending on the school, but.
I mean, it doesn't guarantee us to get funding, but it qualifies why we ask for funding.
So to follow up on Mr. Reed's note, so I am at just about every board of supervisor, and I do avail myself of public comments, and I am happy to either do my best, Ms. Suarez invitation, and or is there appetite from this board to share this with the board of supers in a way that, and what would that relationship look like? Who would communicate if we want to engage with them so that they know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna hit it too hard. I just think this is where I'm a big proponent of the chairs of each board, the vice chairs of each board, county people and school people sitting down once a month, because we could literally say in the month of November or October, whenever that meeting is, this is one of the most critical things we'll look at of the whole entire year. Let's just make this the sole focus of a meeting, because then, and it's, again, I know it's that they don't, it's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't want to staff everything. They have a very hard job to do allocating all this money to the county. But if we can qualify what we're asking for, it just makes that ask much more relevant to them. And so, because it's like, you put so much time into this, I would hate that it's just in a link somewhere. And then when we ask, it's just, you know, and I hate to put it this way, but it's like, here comes the budget. You know what I mean? Like, I would love for it to be, here comes the budget, comma, but here's why we're asking for what we're asking for. That way, we can qualify it and also take the work that you do for this and say, this is why we need this, or this is why we would love to request this, because we know it will help. Like, and I mean, the ESL, I think I pronounced it right, like, that's huge. It's like, we got another teacher and then the test scores skyrocket. And that might not be the case for everything, but that's a tangible, we asked for this, we got this, here's the result. I would be concerned that they don't see that if we don't present this and share this with them. And that's not necessarily on you. That's kind of a challenge to our board and their board to have that conversation built off of your work. So that's where that question comes from. Like, how can we take this and basically be like, hey, here's a whole conversation around it? Because that's honestly where the bulk of our funding conversations start, is in this email. And then it also helps our relationship with them during the funding process of, guys, here's where this conversation's coming from. So soapbox, I'm off my soapbox, but
So
we
can I ask-
appreciate your work, because this is,
I have seen some budget books where they, you know, for every like line item budget ask in there, they do have supporting data that, you know, mirrors, whatever that, so I mean, that wouldn't be.
I'd love to do that more. Are there 3 board members who would be happy to have Dr. Gretz send this as a PDF to our county counterparts to say, we had a great discussion on this. There are some areas where our board will probably be looking at options to help this along. Feel free to ask questions.
I'd be all for that. I mean, any way we can increase communication, I'd be for.
Mr. In-house, Mr. Key?
I'm happy to send that either way.
Yeah, I wouldn't see any problem with that.
Right, let's get it going. Like, honestly, the more we can communicate openly, and this is our area of expertise, or should be, and if they don't know, like, if they can't see it, maybe they don't know.
And that's where I think we're at, is like, I think it's just a matter of us doing a better job communicating to them. So that way, when they go to allocate those funds throughout the county, we may not get it. And I'm not a proponent of skyrocketing a school budget either, but like, we just gotta let them know what you're telling us, and this is no criticism to years past. I just don't know if we've done the best job of that. So that way, when they make that decision, it's a data-driven decision, not us just saying like, we really want this spot, or we don't really care about, you know? So I just appreciate you put this together, because this is,
And I
Right.
wanted to mention, because we didn't get notification till Tuesday, so it wasn't able to make it into this presentation, but last year, the state for our early childhood programs, we have a new measurement system called Birth Q5, and basically you're rated much like accreditation on curriculum, class teacher observations. Our students participate in pre-K version of VKRP and PALS, and so we got our award notification that we were solidly meeting expectations for our early childhood pre-K program. So I just want to recognize those teachers as well, because they definitely are impactful to, you know, our earliest learners that come to us, you know, getting them ready for their K-12 experience. So.
Fabulous. I have a point, not for you specifically, but maybe you can shed some light. So our ADM numbers are going down. We lost about 20 kids on average per school day, based on attendance and what have you. But also, it's my understanding that that new development, Colonial Circle, is now starting, folks are starting to move in. So can we track somehow how many additional students we're getting from new moves into the community?
I mean, most of the ADM was high school, and then our
Yeah.
kindergarten wasn't what we what we expect, what we projected, so.
I was surprised
We'll
by
do it
that.
wrong again next year too, but.
I thought it
um,
was gonna be higher. I'm
yeah.
the first one to say
but
that I set alarm bells. 'cause I
Last
thought
I
we were-
heard was a lot of the people that are moving to that new development are already from transportation was saying, they're already, our kids on our transportation route, so.
Savannah, they're moving from yeah.
I heard
So far.
anecdotally it was 70 new, 30 within, but like, I find all numbers that aren't finite and like well-sourced to be suspect. So I would love to just kind of keep an eye on it so we know kind of how many-ish we
Yeah, I
got
mean,
from that.
That would be something easy to identify through
Sure.
transportation of what kids we're adding to our rosters for.
I'm sure.
I
over
mean,
the
it won't
next month
capture
here
everybody,
it'll-
but yeah.
Great, thank you.
And the only other thing in your packet was the new accountability system from the state that was approved by the Board of Education, I think last month. So here are the 4 performance categories, ways in which we'll be rated on next year. So you won't see any more of the the different levels 1, 2, and 3 and those different groups. You'll earn points towards being distinguished, on track, off track, needs intensive support. If you look at the bottom, it kind of shows you the weighting. There's 3 areas: mastery, growth, and readiness. If you go to the next page, so there's elementary. So 65% now is going to be based just on so that's going to be our whether or not they pass the SOLs. VAP will be included, and then our English learner progress will get included in that 65% for elementary. Growth will be 25%, and that'll be spring to spring growth on SOLs for grades 4 through 8. And currently 3rd grade, we're guessing it's going to be math, our math growth that we're allowed to submit for 3rd grade. Readiness is supposed to be 5% chronic absenteeism and 5% performance tasks, but we were told that the state will not have those performance tasks developed and ready for next year for us. So they're going to have all 10% of that readiness category come from chronic absenteeism. I did model this out. They provided us with the workbook formula, and I modeled it out using this past year's data. If we were being, graded on this model, and Carriesbrook fell at 85.7%. So we were definitely, if you go back up to the first page, we were on track. We were within the on track. That 10% chronic absenteeism, even though Carriesbrook, made the federal benchmark below 15%, just how that was weighted really did impact us. Also, that mastery, kids are counted 1 time if they pass the SOL, but if they pass advanced, they get counted 1.25. And we didn't have as many pass advance scores at Carriesbrook. We had lots of passes, which why we were a level 1 this year, but we didn't have as many pass advance. So that is, definitely impacting in this new model. And then middle school, we're still uncertain where our middle school is. And we report our middle school right 5.7 as elementary to the state. We're uncertain of whether we'll be elementary model for this new accountability system or whether we'll be on this middle school one. I will say Carriesbrook, because they don't give a grade 5 science SOL on the modeling. I didn't have an option to not use science, so I had to use 5th grade middle school. So definitely our unique grade spans are possibly going to have some impact on this. And then the difference, again, is just mastery on an SOL is weighted a little bit less at middle school than elementary school. I'm not sure what to say about that. And then readiness, you'll see that they've got multiple things, not just chronic absenteeism that they get to count towards readiness. So, and then the high school model, again, mastery is even less at the high school for passing an SOL test. And then chronic absenteeism, or readiness, they look at chronic absenteeism as 5%, and then they have graduation rate and something that's, I think, still being developed, the Ready for Life 3E. So you get points for dual enrollment credit or high demand industry credentials. So there's a specific list of industry credentials that if your kids are being credentialed in those areas, you get points for that. And they're even actually going to consider a military enlistment. I think it's going to be part of that. So. And then this will be a change. So they are moving to using that federal graduation indicator. So that is a change for graduation.
So, thank you for doing the math. My first question was gonna be if we plugged in our existing statistics, to what extent do we find ourselves within a reasonable category? It does seem like, the weights here are gonna be variable and shifting. But it does underlie, to the extent that we care about accreditation and wanna bend over backwards to do it. I also just, prefer to have our kids in the building where they belong. That absenteeism in particular is not gonna look great as it relates to our accreditation, and I hope that we do it because it's the right thing to do to help our students get to the building. But it certainly looks like it will have a compelling and important piece of this entire puzzle.
Will indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Great job. Mr. Key, I didn't know if you wanted to maybe extend to Ethan. If you wanted to roll out, if you had homework or things to do, you are welcome to make an exit. We'd love for you to stay, but I don't want you to feel like you're sacrificing time for something.
Dr. Gretz, set your curfew, huh?
No, not at all.
I'm
I was
kidding.
told when we first did this that the board used to do this around 9 o'clock.
Okay, board,
Just teasing.
unfinished business, or any unfinished business? On to new business, any new business? On to 13A action items.
Nothing new, board members, from these policies you revert last time. I recommend you approve them. I'm happy to go into detail on any if you'd like to look at them again. They haven't changed.
On approval of ESBA Food Bank policy updates from September 11th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve VSBA policy updates as presented from September 11th meeting.
I'll second.
All right, I have a second for approval of VSBA Food Bank policy updates from September 11th, 2024. All those in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Vice Chair votes aye.
I'll note, I should have done during discussion, we didn't have it, but that most of these were state code and reference updates, and that we declined to put in the electronic school board meeting information, that it was a policy that was optional, but that we did not just elect to adopt it. It was one of the ones that we decided not to push through.
On to 13B, approval of Piedmont Regional Education Program.
Yeah, so as the representative to PrEP, I am quite happy to make a motion that we approve the Piedmont Regional Education Program memorandum of agreement to be their fiscal agent.
Thanks, Dr. Kelly.
I'll second.
All right, thanks, Mr. Rittenhouse. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Any opposed? All right, on to 13C, approval of Central Elementary bathroom remodel. Do I have a motion?
Do we, I suppose we can do it during discussion, but would it make sense for Dr. Gretz to do a little exposition on this new item?
Yeah, Dr. Gresham.
Absolutely. So this RFP was the result of the funding that was received from the county last year of $488,000. I can get the exact amount to renovate the 4 bathroom facilities at Central Elementary. Scope was developed, RFP was put out. It was actually advertised on the 1st of August. There was a pre-bid meeting, on-site pre-proposal meeting on the 23rd, and there were 8 contractors who came to that proposal meeting. The deadline to apply was the 20th of September, and there was only one that chose to submit a bid. And that's the contract that you have in the agenda, or that we have submitted to you. The reason it wasn't able to be put in the agenda when it was published is that we went through an extensive process to review references and to talk to divisions that had used this contractor to make sure that we felt confident about recommending to you that we move forward. So amending the agenda to include it, if it's approved, will enable us to begin the process a month sooner. And that's the purpose for this. Any questions that you have? I think the on-site work could begin as early as probably the 28th, realistically, if we approve it tonight. Could be a little earlier. If it starts then, we are looking at a completion date in June, probably.
So a couple of questions. One is, will this bid go into board docs and be available for the public?
Yes, we'll attach the bid and the contract.
And for the public record, can you indicate the name of the company and the dollar amount of the bid, or shall I read it? Is that fine?
If you have it in front of you, you can.
I do.
Otherwise, I can.
It says Haley Builders and the job quote is $319,912. And then the reason I'm doing this is just because I wanted to be in the public space. You guys don't have access to it. Those at home don't have access to it. To be 100%, we got this when we came in today, meaning the board, and it's not usual that I would vote in favor of something that I see within 24 hours. I can tell you that I was able to read the entire proposal between closed session and now. I was able to get through it and I feel comfortable with it. And I'll also note that given we have one bid for this and it is under budget, and because what you've said so far is that the references have been stellar or positive.
They've been positive.
Have been positive. That, and it's your recommendation to move forward with this?
Yes.
And you said Dr. Stribble vetted them as well.
Did indeed. We made personal phone calls. I have worked with this company in a former division on an addition and a renovation. So I'm confident in the recommendation, and the reason for trying to expedite it is, the review team that would have evaluated the different bids using the rubric. There was no need for that. It did meet on the 8th, but, 4th of October. So it was following that meeting that I really got the recommendation and then decided to bring it to you. I do recommend that you approve.
And after this renovation, how many more bathrooms still need?
Oh, gosh,
20, a bunch.
say 32, I think. Please don't hold me to that.
It's
I'd
a
have to go
pretty
back
big
and
number.
see.
It's each of those individual
32.
bathrooms and the little classrooms and everything.
Less extensive than this, because they're different size and different fixtures.
Well, I guess that's the point. We're making a huge.
These are the old
push to
ones
get
that
the
like,
bathroom.
I think everybody I've talked to that's got 10 or 20 or 30 years on me has said, I use those same bathrooms and it's the same infrastructure. So they're super old. Sorry, the only reason I did that is that I don't make decisions quickly as an individual. I'm real slow because I want to do research and I want to take my time and be responsible and responsive to the public. This is an exception where I've seen it today and I've heard a compelling need to move forward a little quicker than I'm usually comfortable with, but I wanted y'all to hear why and what we're doing and to make sure that it's in the public space.
Right,
Sure.
board.
Thank you.
I will entertain a motion for the approval of Central Elementary bathroom remodel RFP.
I'll make a motion, we go ahead and accept the renovations for the restrooms at Central Elementary as presented this evening.
I'll second.
Right, I have a motion to have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So we're on to the 14A, public comments. This is our second set public comments. So we'll come to time of our meeting for the second round of public comments. I remind everyone that policy, only members of the community, meaning residents, Fluvanna and staff, Fluvanna County Public Schools may address the board unless you're a legal counsel representing a group's interest in tonight's proceedings. We welcome all community members who are here to give information or opinions. We ask you to come to the podium, tell your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. We'll start with the names. There's no sign up sheet, but anybody can come down, but you're welcome to come down for input. On the public comments, the board will not interact with you, but we're listening and appreciate your time. If I have anybody that want to come and speak. So no one is coming, so I will close the second round of public comments. On to 15A, school board comments. I will start to my right with Dr. Kelly.
Yeah, gosh, a number of things. So one, I'll note that not only is the time in which we get performance data one of my favorite board meetings of the year, because I feel like it's when we engage in substance and where we're really focused on outcomes for our students, and granted, just one symptom of many that we use to think about our students' growth. I also find that this meeting in particular has been remarkably collegial and collaborative and communicative. And so I love that about our board. And so I appreciate that. I'll note that I feel like I've been in the schools a whole bunch, but haven't done a good job sort of communicating out that I've been, we visited the high school 2 weeks ago together and spent a lot of time talking to staff and teachers. I had a young man cut my hair in the barbering department. And so that was a fun experience. Yeah, it was cool. It was nice to see somebody who's working on a skill. I mean, that's a lifelong skill that they ultimately can use whether or not they go to college. There's always, someone who needs their haircut and some people more than others. And so he did a fabulous job and I'm happy for that. It was lovely to get to the Horace Scruggs dedication and to see that space named for somebody who has impacted so many of our students. I've been going to prep meetings regularly to look at what the future, one, because it's my responsibility, but also I share this with you because it ultimately impacts the way that we provide student services. And we'll be going through changes as our Ivy Creek schools leases up and we're looking for new spaces. And so all of that is critically important. I was away for a bit. And so I obviously participated remotely last month, but that meant also that I think there was a CTE meeting that I wasn't able to attend to and others, but I can argue that vacation is a good mirror to show you how you're spending your time upon return. And I'm doing my best to be at as many things as possible. Football games, helping the marching band during their halftime show. And so I'm trying my best to be in a million places at once. I'm never gonna meet my own standard or my own goals, but Fall Festival, all these things. And that's all just in the 2+ weeks I've been home. And so I'm never gonna get to everything, but I am gonna try to distribute my time as evenly as I can between grade levels and interest and sports and music and arts and all of the things that are important. If there are things that are particularly compelling, or if there are things you would like to see representation from school board members at, please email me. I will do my best. I am enjoying the new app and it has a nice calendar feature, so I get yet another place to remind myself that if I am home on a weekday and I have my feet on the coffee table, that I am not living right. So I'll continue to see you out there.
Thanks, Dr. Kelly. Mr. Reed.
Short and sweet. I just want to give Ms. Soares a shout out again, because that was a lot of time and effort that you put in for tonight. So thank you very much and look forward to using that moving forwards and just keep it rocking and rolling.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Rittenhouse.
Yes, thank you to Ms. Soares for all the information you presented. You did it so nicely and efficiently, and very, very clear and easy to understand. That also shows, you know, we have a lot of room, a lot of goals we need to strive for to get the students to where they need to be. But that's pretty it. Thank you.
Thank you. So also, I've been to a lot of the events. It was great seeing board members out there. The Horse Scrubs event, the Central Fall Festival was great. The home football game when they beat Almar County last week. I think the first time they probably beat them in 10+ years. Just everybody pay attention to the 10/24, the Fluco engagement night. That's important for everybody to attend, have their voices heard, make sure we all get on the same page. It's also great to hear that Fluvanna Public Schools has been accredited for 11 straight years. That's awesome work. Also, the 95% graduation rate, that's pretty awesome. So that's it as far as my comments. There's some information items, board members, 16A, VSBA newsletter, upcoming events, 16B, Fluvanna County Public Schools press release and upcoming events. On to 17A, adjourn the meeting. Can I entertain the motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.